Hello, welcome to another video from the Conscious Music School. Today is part 2 of our series, Conscious Life Hacks for Savvy Musicians. I'm Simon Siddle. Today's lesson, get and keep a journal. I could spend a long time here telling you all of the benefits of keeping a journal. It is in essence a distilled form of the archetype of what writing can do to human beings. When it's well used, a journal can be a mirror on your own mind and a microscope and a telescope inside your own mind to allow you to see things that being in the present with yourself would never allow you, but having this reflection written down that you can refer to back through history, it can give you many, many insights that you would otherwise miss. It can concretize your memories. It can order your thoughts. It can be a reminder to you of places that you have been that you have never been back to since. There are many, many things that a journal can be. I could spend a long time in this video just describing all of them, but I won't. What I will do instead is simply heartily recommend to you, procure yourself a journal from somewhere and begin to use it, and your experience will tell you the worth of this practice. Now, you may want to manufacture your own journal out of whatever materials you want, if you're that kind of artsy person. Otherwise, you may simply want to go and buy a blank book. Before you do that, though, it's important to consider some things about that book. This journal is going to be an extension of your mind to some degree. It's going to be part of yourself. If you buy a book that's of an impractical size and has an ugly look to it and just doesn't attract you in any way, this process is not going to work at all. This journal has to be something that you are attracted to, that you are fascinated by, that you wish to write in and to read on a regular basis. And as such, there are some considerations to be made when you go about procuring yourself a blank journal. The first of these is size. Now, you may be the sort of artistic person that would want to put drawing sketches in your journal as well as other things. And in that case, usually people would want a somewhat bigger journal, something that starts to become somewhat impractical to carry around with them everywhere. By the time you get to an A4 size book, it's not something you can just slip in your pocket and carry everywhere. So if you choose to have a large journal for something, it's probably a good idea to actually buy a small pocket journal as well, so that you can always have something to hand. Otherwise, find yourself something in a mid-range, somewhere between A4 and perhaps A5, where it would not be a stress to carry this book to every musical activity that you involve yourself in. I've forgotten one thing I should go back to as I'm describing books here. Do not cop out and do this on any kind of electronic tablet or your phone or anything like that. You will be negating large amounts of the subconscious process that goes on that makes journaling such a wonderful thing if you allow a mediating electronic interface to come in between you and your writing. Please go Stone Age analog. I'm talking about paper and ink here, okay? So, first, decide what size book you're going to get. Secondly, consider its shape. Consider what patterns or colours are on the cover. Consider how it feels in your hands, both the weight and the texture, and especially the texture of the paper. You might even go as far as to check whether it smells right for you or not. The more senses you can become, that you can get involved into the choice and the love and appreciation of your journal, the more you will become thoroughly involved with it. So when you are out looking for this thing, make sure that when you whatever book you pick up and examine to see if it's the one, it's got to really instantly attract you in all sorts of ways. If it puts you off in any way, just put the thing down and keep looking. One more aspect to this slightly magical and ceremonial consideration about what you're doing with the simple getting of a book. You may want, at the same time as you are doing this, to try and find yourself a ceremonial pen or pencil that you exclusively use with your journal. At least in the Western magical tradition, a pen is an analogue of a sword, and a sword is one of the elemental archetypes. So there is a lot of power inherent in that, and you could spoil a lot of potential magical potency and intent by simply picking up any old biro around the house and scrawling in your journal. So, once you've got your journal and your pen, you have to decide what to write in it. So, when you've got your journal and your pen, you have to begin to decide what to write in it. This is quite a complicated issue because if you allow too many things into your journal and you're the kind of person that easily becomes overwhelmed, it's quite easy for your journal to become a very, very chaotic mess. Similarly, or rather to the opposite degree, if you're quite a imaginal and daydreamy sort of person, then choosing to involve nothing but technical considerations in the writings of your journal will leave the thing feeling very dry and unattractive to you. So we have to consider this on a pole from practical entries into your journal, entries concerning practical things, right through to the other pole on this line, which I call imaginal. The act of letting the subconscious world, not just you, but everything, because that's how art works, the act of letting that world into your journal. So let's start over on the practical side. You could fill your journal with practice schedules, the goals you've set yourself, the goals you have achieved, the goals you have not managed today, the goals you have completely fluffed. You could put technical considerations into it, instructions, the notes from your instrumental or theory teacher's lesson that week. You can also put feedback in there about what happened when you tried these instructions, so that you can remember exactly how it feels and report back to your teacher the week after about your successes and your failures with their ideas. Stepping slightly away from that practical pole, you could fill your journal with interpretation notes for the pieces that you're learning at the moment. This is a very powerful thing because as we spend weeks or even months sometimes learning a piece of music, our mind and our musical position inside that piece, the way that we choose to interpret it, can drift and even suddenly change quite radically in the midst of our learning. There may be one day when you play through a passage and everything is all just set up right in your mind and in your playing, and suddenly you have an epiphany about how to play a certain passage and it flows beautifully and you're impressed with it like you never were before. It's quite easy, I'm sure most of you know this, you've experienced this at some time or other, it's quite easy to get re-involved in the details of another part of the piece a few days later and to simply forget and lose that epiphany that you had. if you can fill a dedicated space in your journal, a page or a group of pages, with everything that you come across about a piece over weeks and months, and you all store it in one place, then not only can you remember the things that you might have lost through just an overwhelm of varying experience, but you can even, by trusting the fact that you've got these epiphanies down, these notes as to which ways work and which ways don't, you can use this as an anchor to trust yourself to go way out onto a limb with the way that you might interpret a piece, and not worry that by doing that for a few days you're going to lose the sense of how you used to perform any of it, because it's right there stated for you to remind you again. And as such, the journal can begin to have its true use, begin to work at its true use, which is to be able to extend your mind beyond what you can keep in the front of your concentration at any one time, and be there as a grab bag of thoughts and ideas that you can recall faster than you would have been able to should you not be using a journal. Another thing you can use your journal for is to make notes, better still, timed notes of what your mood, your sleep, your diet, and your timing of schedules is doing to your productivity as a musician and your capacity to learn and study. By looking back at these things over the course of weeks, you begin to see patterns in what you've been doing that in the midst of a day's work simply gets looked over. Further over to the imaginal side, you could fill your journal with thoughts and analysis of the music that you've heard recently, that you've fallen in love with. There are many things that you can pick up from a piece of music in the first few times you hear it, that once you've got used to it, those thoughts will never return to you again. A journal is a place where you can capture those ideas so that you can leave them behind and know that they're there to come back to. Stepping further away from the practical pole on this line, you could fill your journal with explorations of the emotional states and the altered mind states that you have got yourself into while you are playing or practicing or studying. Or you could even make a record of your attempts and your successes and failures at getting into certain emotions and certain mind states as you're playing, as an adjunct to your capacity to play well. And now we reach the limit of the collective unconscious, and you have to start making choices about how much of this you really do let into the finite space that is your book. Because the next step is, you could let in the whole archetypal landscape of all the art that you're studying. By which I mean, no piece of music or art is ever produced in a vacuum. There's always many, many connections through to other cultural artifacts going on with the music that you're studying. You could use your journal to study and consider everything connected to the art that you're already studying. This is a very, very big subject, a very, very big thing to let in, and yet this line that we've come to here is the place where, should you go beyond it, a magical thing really does start to happen inside your journal, which is that you are essentially inviting your unconscious and your subconscious, or the unconscious, everybody's unconscious and your subconscious, to start to speak up through your journal, so that it is not just your conscious mind speaking and ranting and emoting and whatever else it does into your book, but that you're actually leaving spaces for things that you didn't expect and you didn't willfully call up to show up for your consideration. One step further, if you're a creative musician that is to allow into your journal all of your creative notes about what you're working on producing at the moment. There could be sketches, there could be lyrics, there could be chord sequences. the workings of your music and the workings of you and your mind are not as separate as you might imagine. And by allowing this aspect of your musicianship into your journal, you are doing yourself a favour in that you are making the walls between your subconscious and your conscious mind somewhat more porous. Now, here I'm not suggesting that you are bringing yourself any closer to the limit of any kind of insanity or emotional loss of control. Simply that you will be able to shine the light of your consciousness further into the darkness of your subconscious by doing such things. A step on from this is to allow into your journal everything that a personal journal might contain. Your stories about your days, your feelings about things and happenings and people and the way your life is going. If you really are committed as a true artist, then the way that you live your life, the manner and the intentions with which you live your life should perhaps actually be rather parallel to the way that you produce your art or your music. By not making any distinction between your life and your art in a journal like this, you are reinforcing to your own mind a sense that these things should be integrated. And then if you want to take that step one more further, then consider letting into your journal everything that a magician's journal might contain, which might be intentions, results from those intentions, affirmations, self-triggers, spells, conversations with the unconscious, or with gods, or with goddesses. Here we come to the apotheosis of what a human being can do with a pen. When you realize that the act of writing and rereading that writing at a later date can seriously affect the more fundamental functionings of your mind, that is a realization of what magic is to some degree. And the more you can allow yourself to get into a place where you know that your writings are going to be read back, that you are going to receive them again, the more you can begin to put deep intention into your writings for how you are going to receive those writings when you encounter them again in the future. So that's a short exploration of what you can choose or not choose to put in your journal. But before you go writing in it, there's one more little thing I'd like you to consider, which is, can you find a sentence, a couple of sentences tops, that would encapsulate everything of your desires and your highest principles for what you want this journal to mean to you? What flavour of cultural or intellectual or emotional pursuit you want this journal to be an example of. If you can boil that down into a dedication for the book, then please spend some good time planning to produce the to produce the first page of that journal as a well-scripted, well-drawn dedication, as a mark to remind you what this book is for, so that every time you pick it up, the vibes, the intention that was there for what you were using this book for can flash back into your mind in an instant, just as you open that front page and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that dedication. I've read it 1,000 times now. I still agree with it. I'm on course. And then finally, we have to consider, if you're the sort of person who's not used to using a journal, then we have to get to a place where it is a habit that you're using a journal. Now, if you're using it for lots of musical exercises, then it's perhaps simply a matter of making sure that it's around your instrument all the time, or that it's in your bag whenever you go to lessons. If it's something that you're going to use for more personal reasons as well, I would suggest a different way to get into to the habit of writing a journal, and that is to find a time of day where you are already practicing some kind of habit. So one of the most obvious and easy ones is when you brush your teeth before you go to bed. Just make it your intention for 40 days perhaps, that every time you brush your teeth, the very next thing you do is you go and sit down with your journal for 5 minutes. And you just make it something that has happened many times at the same time of day. No other willpower is necessary to actually get a habit going in the end, so long as it just happens every day. Even if you just stare at it and go, I've gone blank, I don't know what to say today, you have successfully written in your journal for that day. Do that for 40 days and that object will become very familiar. And if you have chosen properly with it, and it is a fascinating and beautiful book, it will become an extension of you, and it will begin to have that magical power for which you decided to use it in the first place. So there's lesson 2. Get and keep a journal. You like that video? Great, then hit the like button, and if you want to hear more like that, please hit the subscribe button and the bell icon as well. The Conscious Music School is a brand new venture. I can really do with any help that you might offer, even if that help is simply posting this video somewhere where you think somebody else might find it useful. I thank you very much in advance for that. But more importantly, get involved. One of the missions of the Conscious Music School is to start deep and complex conversations about music, musicians and musicianship. So tell me in the comments below, what part of your musical practices and behaviours would you like to keep better track of? Or, if you want to get really involved, you could come and check us out over at theconsciousmusicschool.com, where over the coming months we'll be releasing courses for musicians and music lovers alike. Finally, I want you to know that the series that you're watching here, Conscious Life Hacks for Savvy Musicians, is in fact a very vanilla introduction to the work of the Conscious Music School. I'm producing another series entitled Deeper Considerations for Musicians. But if you want to watch that series, I'm afraid you'll have to follow me over to another platform which is not so fond of censoring people the moment they stand outside of their narrow corporate mindset. Sorry, but that's the nature of the platform that you're watching it on, as much as it is the nature of the Conscious Music School to point out such awkward truths. So come over where the air is lighter. I've left some links below. And that's all I've got for you today. Thank you ever so much for watching. I do appreciate your time and your attention, and I salute the conscious musician within you. You have a great day, and I'll see you again very soon.